Each year since 2007.
In a 2017 speech, President of Harvard University Drew Faust once said that academia is about knowledge and the pursuit of truth. Dr. Faust quoted former Dean of Harvard University's Faculty of Arts and Sciences, the late Jeremy Knowles, who said the most important goal of higher education was to recognize when someone is talking rot.
In order to reflect on the important and the meaningful.
博士论文本来就现在就有公开啊，那我们也是因为这个赫德芬教授说要司法来调查，那我们就去提告由司法来调查。那么同时，我们昨天也提出了很多的证明。
Academia isn't the only field where the pursuit of knowledge and truth is valued. It also plays an important role in democratic society. Evidence proving that Tsai Ing-wen's team is fabricating her doctoral thesis and credentials is piling up. This academic controversy has evolved into a matter of national security and a battle for political power. Now is not the time to back down. It is more important than ever to push on, even if that means we must question the London School of Economics itself and its strange behavior. In our last episode, we unveiled that LSE and the University of London's communications managers have denied damning statements made by the school's library staff and diploma production office. We also showed how Tsai's team disseminated false information to mislead the public. Another important piece of evidence came during Dr. Huan Lin's email correspondence with the University of London's Senate House Library. The library said that in 2011, someone tried to smuggle a thesis into its system. The Senate House Library sent the thesis in question to the University of London's Institute of Advanced Legal Studies for examination, where it was ultimately rejected. The rejection was documented in IALS's files. On October 8, 2019, LSE released a statement saying records confirmed that a copy was received and sent by them to IALS. However, LSE failed to mention that this copy that they sent was rejected in the end. Not every administrative body at LSE is willing to participate in Tsai's scheme. In 2011, LSE struggled with a separate scandal of a similar nature. Saif Gaddafi was next in line to succeed his father, Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. In 2003, Saif enrolled in LSE's doctorate program. 4 years later, in 2007, Saif submitted a thesis. 1 year after that, LSE's Department of Philosophy granted him a PhD. However, in 2011, LSE was criticized for accepting a donation of £300,000 from the Gaddafi International Foundation for Charity Associations, which was headed by Saif. In fact, LSE had accepted a donation of £1.5 million from the foundation in 2009, which it used to establish LSE's North Africa program. The donations raised questions over Saif's doctoral thesis. Some people suspected that the work he submitted was not his own. The topic was hotly debated in England. In 2011, Libya was embroiled in civil war. Muammar Gaddafi violently suppressed his people. LSE drew much criticism for accepting donations from such a harsh regime. Previous chairman of the UK's Financial Services Authority and former director of LSE, Howard Davies, took responsibility for the scandal and resigned from his position at the university as a result. Davies said that deciding to accept the donation was a lapse in personal judgment. An inquiry launched into Saif's doctorate by former Lord Chief Justice Harry Wolff found that Gaddafi's viva was indeed administered properly and approved by 2 examiners. Despite having similar premises, differences remain between the Gaddafi and Tsai thesis controversies. One of them had a thesis, the other did not. However, both parties manipulated the system in similar fashions. First, Saif Gaddafi did complete his doctorate curriculum. However, there are rumors that Saif's advisor David Held wrote Gaddafi's thesis for him. However, Held wasn't merely Saif's advisor, he was also the designated recipient of the £1.5 million donation meant to establish LSE's North Africa program in 2009. Even if there wasn't a conflict of interest, Saif and Held both had value to one another. Whether or not a thesis is ghost-written is hard to prove, unless one person involved confesses to doing so. The fact of the matter is, Gaddafi has a traceable thesis and completed his viva. Wolff's inquiry also unveiled the name of Saif's 2 examiners who kept records of what happened throughout his viva. Tsai, on the other hand, doesn't have a documented thesis, nor were her examiners identified on her student record. Secondly, just like the school's North Africa program, LSE established a Taiwan research program with donated funds. Records show that the school received an anonymous donation of £480,000, equivalent to 30 million new Taiwan dollars in 2007. Gaddafi drew suspicion for his £1.5 million donation to establish a social science research program at LSE. But what of the £480,000 granted to Si Fanglong to establish the Taiwan research program? Was Gaddafi scrutinized only because his donation was public? Does an anonymous donation escape examination because it doesn't have a name linked to it? In email replies from both LSE Library and the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies Library, we find 2 varying degrees of cooperation. Unlike IALS, who refused to accept an unworthy thesis, LSE Library seems to be cooperating with Tsai's team. Both the 2011 thesis smuggling incident and the Ethos thesis database entry created in 2015 may have been carried out by Tsai's team. First, let's go back to June 2011, when Tsai and a group of her confidants met with various influential individuals. On June 2nd, 2011, Tsai traveled to Europe in preparation for Taiwan's 2012 presidential election. On June 8th, Tsai arrived in England from Germany. During that trip, some very important pictures were taken. The people in this picture are current Vice Premier Chen Ximai, then Taiwanese representative to England Catherine Chang, current National Security Council advisor Xiaobi Kim, Tsai Ing-wen herself, and a member of the UK House of Lords Anthony Giddens. Also present but not pictured was current Taiwanese representative to Germany, Professor Xie Ziwei. The Lord Giddens is a longtime friend of Taiwan. Between 1997 and 2004, he was the director of LSE. Former Taiwanese President Chen Shui-bian once revealed that Giddens assisted Tsai in obtaining a replacement diploma in 2015. The presidential office has not denied that claim. In June 2015, an entry for Tsai Ing-wen's thesis was successfully logged in the Ethos database system. Some people believe that Giddens had a hand in that endeavor. However, the interesting thing here is that Lord Giddens has an unsavory past. He was also involved in LSE's Saif Gaddafi scandal in 2011. An investigation into the Gaddafi scandal revealed that the Lord Giddens made several visits to Saif's residence. Giddens has since refused to comment on whether or not he received monetary compensation from Saif. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then this one tells an entire story. Photographed within this small conference room is Tsai Ing-wen, Chen Ximai, Xiaobi Kim, Xie Ziwei, and then LSE Interim Director Judith Reese. Reese was tapped as temporary director of LSE when Davies stepped down. What plots were laid that day by these 5 individuals? In this picture, Tsai's 5-person team is shown visiting David Held. Held was Saif Gaddafi's doctoral advisor at LSE. Less than 6 months after this picture was taken, Held resigned from his post at LSE. Why did Tsai meet with such a controversial figure during such a sensitive time? What were the 2 parties planning? The Senate House Library mentioned that someone attempted to smuggle a thesis into its collection in 2011. What if that attempt took place during this visit to LSE? How many people in the Democratic Progressive Party have knowledge of the true nature of this thesis mystery? Why is Catherine Chang a pan-blue supporter among the people participating in this visit? Is her involvement indicative of the KMT's cooperation? Furthermore, what role does former LSE director Lord Giddens play here? Now that this thesis has become a struggle for political power, how many national resources are being dedicated to concealing the truth? How many people are propping up this charade? So far, we've deduced that communications offices at both the University of London and LSE are involved. There's also the ubiquitous Shi Fanglong and member of the UK House of Lords, Lord Anthony Giddens. Even though Tsai's team attempted to sneak a thesis into the University of London's Senate House Library in 2011, the book was swiftly rejected by IALS. Regardless, the Lord Giddens managed to help Tsai's camp land a big victory in 2015. President Chen Shui-bian revealed that Giddens helped Tsai obtain a replacement diploma in 2015. The entry for Tsai's supposed thesis, Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard Actions, also appeared in the British Library's Ethos thesis database in that same year. From this, we can gather that not only does LSE's communications staff have a hand in this ruse, but the University of London is also playing a part as well. This reissued diploma that the president applied for in 2010 is certified by Taiwan's representative office in the UK. This diploma also bears the signature of the school's then chancellor, which confirms the degree's conferment. This is another reissued diploma the president applied for in 2015. It also has the signature of the school's then chancellor. We have here written confirmation that the president received her degree. It very clearly says that a PhD in law was conferred on Tsai Ing-wen on March 14, 1984. In 2015, Tsai was getting ready to run for president again. She was poised to become Taiwan's leader. Lord Giddens was the key player that won the University of London to Tsai's side. The amount of manipulation our team found in June 2019 remains shockingly unfathomable.
蔡英文女士公布她的博士论文的指导教授的名字，我们拿到了书面的东西，那就 bingo 啦。然后挂号 Thesis PhD 2019。
In June 2019, Tsai's team, with cooperation from LSE, successfully inserts a thesis into the women's library at LSE. The thesis provided is supposedly Tsai's personal copy. On October 18th, a digital copy of the thesis's text was sent to the library as well. This thesis supposedly existed for 36 years but had never been seen by anyone else. At first, the thesis is shown to have two authors. The other person who helped pen the thesis is Michael John Elliott, a man who Tsai claimed was her doctoral advisor. LSE later revised the thesis's information to list Ingwen Tsai as its only author. The Ethos database entry for Tsai's thesis originally listed the date of award as 1984. However, in order to fit Tsai's story, it was later changed to 1983. The ProQuest database also suddenly showed an additional entry from 1983 under Tsai Ing-wen. Manipulation occurred in Taiwan as well. For example, Lin Huan, a student Tsai advised at Soochow University, had their graduation date changed from 1984 to 1985. Documents outlining funding for the LSE Taiwan Research Program, originally released by the Education Ministry, suddenly disappeared from the internet. The files can't be found using any keyword searches at all. The most important development took place on July 19, 2019. While the Education Ministry held a press conference publicizing Tsai's credentials, documents that pertained to her thesis, degree, and teaching career were deemed classified until December 31, 2049. What's more is that the Education Ministry tried to pass off a thesis completed in 2019 as a thesis from 1984. American independent investigative journalist Michael Richardson is one of the few reporters following this thesis mystery. In July 2019, he published his own findings. Richardson received a similar reply from library staff at LSE. An email sent to him said, "Dr. Tsai's thesis is unavailable, I'm afraid. LSE Library has never had a copy of this thesis." Journalists are familiar with how easily documents can be falsified. However, vivas, otherwise known as oral defenses, are very difficult to fabricate. Richardson focused his attention on the viva that famously resulted in 1.5 PhDs being granted to Tsai Ing-wen. On October 31st, 2019, Richardson wanted to find out who administered Tsai Ing-wen's viva. Rachel McGuire, Information and Records Manager at LSE, told Michael Richardson this. "The school believes that this information is held in full by the University of London. The viva report would be a University of London record. An award letter was sent out from the University of London Registrar on February 8, 1984. A degree certificate was issued on March 14, 1984. McGuire repeated what the LSE communications staff said about Tsai's degree. However, she did not reveal anything about Tsai's examiners and even said that the records were handled by the University of London. To add validity to her statement, Maguire said that the Viva took place on October 16, 1983. But like we said before, that date falls on a Sunday. How likely is it that a Viva would be held on a Sunday? Next, Richardson wrote to the University of London. On December 10, 2019, University of London's Data Protection, Freedom of Information, and Records Management employee Kit Good wrote the following to Richardson. The University of London confirms that Miss Ingwen Tsai was awarded a PhD by the University of London in 1984, and she was registered as an LSE student. The university will carry out an internal review in accordance with the guidance from the Information Commissioner's Office. The Information Commissioner's Office is a non-departmental public body in the UK that handles public and personal data. The University of London refused to reveal the name of Tsai's examiners. Instead, it threw the ball into the ICO's court, but said it would conduct a 6-week internal review. Who were Tsai's examiners? Why is it so difficult to get a straightforward answer to this question? This question went from LSE all the way to the Information Commissioner's Office. Why does getting an answer require a 6-week internal review? It's unbelievable that something so simple has become so complicated. Is it possible that this information needs to first be approved by and discussed with the presidential office? The duration of the review also meant that the information would not become available until after Taiwan's presidential elections. Interestingly, Kit Good provided Richardson with a link to an online statement made by LSE on October 8th, which said Tsai's degree is legitimate. If the University of London had all of Tsai's files and records, then why was it that the school deferred to a statement made by LSE's Media Relations Department? These minor but telling actions are exactly why our investigation team believes that staff at the University of London is cooperating with Tsai. But why are they cooperating? Does it have to do with the anonymous £480,000 donation, or is it simple diplomacy? We're still looking into the matter. On January 26, 2020, after Taiwan's presidential elections, Rosalind Frendo, secretary of the board of the University of London, sent an email with an answer similar to the one Kit Good gave. Frendo's email said, "The university does consider that the information which comprises part of a student record is personal data. Students will have a high expectation that records of their registration and the attendance at the university, which may reference a number of factors relating to their professional and personal life, would not be subject to public disclosure. Even in the case of a PhD thesis where there is an expectation that the thesis would be publicly available, there is no expectation that further records of the assessment would be disclosed." The interesting thing about this answer is that it seems to have taken into account Tsai's personal preference. Michael Richardson was, of course, unhappy with the perfunctory response he received from the University of London. On February 5, 2020, Richardson cited the UK Freedom of Information Act and asked the Information Commissioner's Office whether or not names of examiners were private information. On March 23, 2020, the ICO gave a preliminary response, emphasizing that their current decision was not final. The ICO agreed with the University of London's decision not to provide names of Tsai's examiners, saying it was indeed private information. The ICO member handling Richardson's case, Cressida Woodall, wrote the following. "The requested information is associated with an individual in a private and personal capacity. I am satisfied that the individual concerned, the student, would have the reasonable expectation that their personal data, that is, specific information about their thesis, who examined it and when, would not be disclosed to world at large in response to an FOI request. I consider it likely that disclosing this information would cause that individual a degree of damage or stress." Why would revealing the examiners who granted a student 1.5 PhDs in 2 years be damaging or distressing to a student? Logically, if revealing examiners would disturb a person's status quo, then under those circumstances, it would indeed be damaging and distressing. However, if it wouldn't change anything, how could that be deemed damaging or distressing? What kind of damage or distress could be done by revealing examiners in this case? Mysteriously, the ICO asked Richardson in a roundabout manner not to pursue the matter further due to the current coronavirus outbreak in an email. You will be aware of the challenges that public authorities and government departments are currently facing as a result of the coronavirus emergency. The Commissioner is considering the regulatory approach that will be possible and appropriate to take with those bodies at this time, and more detail about this will be communicated in due course. Who were Tsai Ing-wen's examiners? This question has been kicked around from LSE to the University of London and now to the Information Commissioner's Office. The ICO says that due to the coronavirus outbreak, it can't be sure of when it can respond to related inquiries. English officials have had very strange reactions to this entire fiasco. It's not far-fetched to think that there's diplomatic pressure at play here. Investigations into the Saif Gaddafi scandal not only revealed information on Saif's Viva, it also publicized the names of his examiners. In the end, Gaddafi even held on to his PhD. It's almost been half a year since we launched our investigation into Tsai Ing-wen's thesis. The 2020 presidential election is over and Tsai has won re-election. Why don't English authorities holding the evidence simply address the public's concerns? Why must this thesis mystery drag on? Perhaps the answer can be found in one of Tsai's own speeches.
最荒谬的事情是什么？我有3个 examiner 是3个口试委员。这个因为我的论文是法律跟经济的混合体，所以一个是我的指导老师，一个是经济学家，一个是学法律。那个律师就说你的经济部分写得不错，那个经济学家说我法律的部分写得不错。这个大概是有史以来伦敦政经学院最令人惊奇的这个博士论文考试。然后最后他们决定给我1.5个学位。
Why do English authorities keep dodging questions? The answer might be here. It's hard for anyone to believe that 3 examiners would preside over a Viva on a Sunday. This thesis mystery is the first of its kind, as it involves a sitting president. The severity of what's transpired is far greater in magnitude than other academic scandals that have taken place in Germany, Romania, and Hungary. What started out as an academic issue is now a political controversy. Ultimately, this may become a transnational lawsuit. In our next episode, we expose more evidence and figures involved in this bout of academic dishonesty.